Hello and welcome to today's edition of Extraordinary Outcomes. I'm Shubhanjan Sarkar, your host and founder of Pitchling, the buyer-seller engagement platform. Today we bring you the third installment of the 8-part limited series, Fixing the 5% Problem in B2B Sales, bringing you engaging discussions with 24 renowned experts from around the world about the elephant in the sales room, the abysmally low rate of conversion in B2B sales. Today we speak with Steve Bistritz, founder of SellExcel.com, Tim Wackel, founder and president of the Wackel Group, and Melissa Maddian, founder and chief fabulous officer at TMM Enablement Services. We start with Dr. Steve Bistritz, founder of SellExcel.com. Steve has more than 40 years of high-tech sales and sales training experience. He spent 28 years with IBM and was the manager of sales training for a billion-dollar division. Steve co-authored the best-selling sales book, Selling to the C-Suite, published by McGraw-Hill, and remains a lecturer in the field of sales, sales management, and selling to executives. His sales training workshops have been delivered to tens of thousands of salespeople worldwide. Steve holds a doctorate in human resource development from Vanderbilt University. Over to Steve. Steve, welcome to Extraordinary Outcomes and the special segment Fixing the 5% Problem in B2B Sales. I'm absolutely delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Subhanjan.
We believe the elephant in the room and no salesperson wants to talk about, or mostly not talk about, which is the 5% conversion problem in B2B sales. We get 100 leads and we,
Right.
at best, sell to 5. Actually, according to Forrester, it's as low as 1.8, depending upon the industry, or depending upon who you're selling to or what you're selling, to at the most 7.88%. That's the range. Where do you stand on this, Steve?
One of the things that we did with helping salespeople manage their sales opportunities is have them take a look at the prospects they were dealing with and seeing which one of those prospects they had no chance of winning and discarding those, disengaging from those, so they can focus on the better opportunities that they had a better chance of winning, a better chance of being successful with. And that's another key area that salespeople need to look at is how do they manage their sales opportunities? Getting things in the pipeline is really important, but getting the right prospects in the pipeline is even more important. You don't want to get that account from hell that costs you a lot of your time, effort, and energy and yields very little results to you.
Tell me, how did we as a profession land ourselves here?
It's not necessarily us, okay? Because when I started selling back in the day, as they say, okay, we had to research our client or customer by going to the library, getting the annual report from the company, dealing with the company's investor relations office to have them send us by snail mail a copy of the annual report. I think today, a salesperson could virtually drive up to a prospect's office and do the research in the car before they walked into that customer's office. Now, I'm not suggesting that's what they should do, but on the other side of the coin, the salesperson, when I was out there selling, was the expert. We knew the products and services. The customer executive, they didn't have that level of knowledge. Today's customer executive is researching not only the solution or the product or service, they're researching your competitors' solutions and products. They're researching your solutions and products. And also, they're doing research on you. They're looking you up on LinkedIn to see who I'm going to be dealing with as a client executive. Salespeople have to be proactive in how they market themselves on LinkedIn. And one of the things I'm telling salespeople today is, here's something you can do right away. Take a look at your LinkedIn profile and ask yourself the question, is it something that would be attractive to a client executive? If a client executive read that, would they be interested in talking to you? What's the added value you bring to the organization? And I'll give you another example there if I could. When we were doing that research with CXO level executives where we asked them about their relationships with professional salespeople, I went with one of the MBA students and we were doing a practice interview. And she asked all the questions, did a great job. And then I turned to the CIO and I said, now, Jim, tell me why an executive at your level would ever want to meet with a professional salesperson. And I'll never forget the answer he gave us. He said, I like to meet with professional salespeople because often they can offer me solutions that even people in my own company can't come up with. They've seen these problems in other companies, and I want the benefit of their experience and knowledge, okay? Now, what did that do to me right away? That validated me as a professional salesperson. And what I tell salespeople is, you really have three elements of a value proposition that you should be focusing on. Number one is your personal value, your experience, your background that you bring to the client organization. Second is the value of your company's products and services and things that are not really just the solution, other things that your company brings to them, other value that you can deliver to them, experts that you may have in certain areas that they don't have, okay? So that's a second element, the value of your company's products and services beyond your company's products and services. And then the last is your solution. But salespeople only focus on your solution, and then they get involved in a commoditized situation with their competitor, right? Differentiation comes from those other two elements of value.
How do we solve this?
So it's doing that qualification process more effectively. And I actually have salespeople focus on 9 criteria that are part of a qualification process, okay? And I say to them that you should be looking at your opportunities with what I call 3 compelling questions at multiple times in a sales campaign. The first question is, should we pursuing this opportunity? What's changing in the client environment that's creating the need for your solution, okay? Because what you want to do is align your solution with a key business initiative of the client. In other words, something the client has to implement, something they have to do, okay? So that's compelling question number 1. What's changing in the client environment, okay? The second compelling question is, do we have a solution that can be integrated into the client environment, and have we articulated the business value of that solution to the executive, right? But the third question is the most important question. Can we win this opportunity? Are we aligned with the most powerful people in the client organization who can help us win the deal? And I say that person is the relevant executive for the sales opportunity. And the relevant executive is the executive who stands to gain the most or lose the most as a result of the outcome of the project or application that's associated with your sales opportunity. And when you find that relevant executive can assert their influence, okay, over the buying decision. And even if a formal decision has already been made, the relevant executive can change it. And then you've got to align with that individual and have them become your mentor. And what I mean by mentor is someone who will sell in your absence. Then underneath those three compelling questions, there are 9 criteria. And the criteria I say salespeople should be checking is, number 1, is your solution aligned with a key client business initiative? So that's criteria number 1. Criteria number 2 is, what's the client's ability to fund the project? Do they have money? Do they have budget? Do they have access to discretionary funds? The third, what's the client's driving reason to change? Some people call it the compelling event. Why do they have to do this? All right. And again, if your solution doesn't, if you can't answer yes to those 3 questions, that's number 1. That's a red flag. Okay. Okay. So number 4 is, what's the viability of our solution? Now we're talking about, can we compete? Number 5 is, do we have the sales and implementation resources necessary to win this deal? If we win it, can we implement it? All right. I was talking to somebody at Microsoft yesterday about just that situation. And when I asked him that question, his eyes lit up and he said, well, I think we do, but maybe you can get a business partner to help you. So that's another thing that you can look at for criteria number 5. Criteria number 6 is, what's the specific business value of our solution? All right. And have we articulated that? That's our value proposition. So number 7 then is, what's our ability to affect either the formal or informal buying process? Can we affect it? Okay. Or can the customer even affect it, the customer executive, right? Number 8, what's our alignment in terms of executive credibility and support? Do we have a level of executive credibility and support within this client organization? And number 9 is, what's our alignment with the relevant executive? Are we aligned with the relevant executive? Have we identified that relevant executive? So there's the 3 compelling questions. Should we pursue? Can we compete? Can we win? And then there's these 9 criteria.
Fantastic. Steve, thank you so much. I really enjoyed and I learned a lot today. I hope when people see this, they will learn a lot too.
You have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. Coming up next is Melissa Maddian, founder and chief fabulous officer at TMM Enablement Services. She was one of the first people to pioneer the sales enablement role and has spent the past 25 years perfecting the sales experience for revenue generating teams. She's author of Enabler, I Hardly Know Her. Melissa was also one of LinkedIn's 15 top sales influencers to follow in 2020 and ranked 10th in the 35 plus most influential women leading B2B marketing technology. Meet Melissa. Melissa, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to have you join me from Canada. I've been looking forward to our chat. Without further delay, let's dive right in and talk about the elephant in the room, which apparently we don't want to talk about, the abysmal lead to conversion rate in B2B sales. Where do you stand on that, Melissa?
It's actually not that surprising that it's bad, because there's so much that happens at the beginning of the sales and marketing funnel, and there's such a lack of alignment between the marketing, the traditional marketing side of things, which is build the brand, get the name out there, generate interest and demand for the products or services that you have to offer. And then there's this sort of black hole that happens between marketing's activity at the beginning of the funnel and then sales or sales development reps actually taking inbound interest or even outbound activity and trying to create opportunities that ultimately close. So I think there's a lot of siloed things happening at the beginning of the funnel that I think contributes to that terrible conversion rate.
What got us here?
Mm.
So let's start sort of unpacking from there.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot to unpack. So I'll start with how I think we got to here, which is before the internet. So when I was, first, actually between my first and second year of university, I got a sales job, and it was what we would call now a sales development rep job, an inside sales job, somebody who's there to cold call people and get leads. At that time, marketing was very, you build the brand and you run commercials and you create billboards and you build like data sheets. And it was sales's responsibility to go out there, cold call, generate demand, create leads, and then convert those leads to close. Then the internet happened, and now the target market can go and do all the research they need to do on their own. And I think what happened was marketing and sales didn't quite realize the impact of the funnel, or the impact that would have on the funnel. And when you've got marketing still doing their thing and sales still doing their thing, but there's no bridge between those two, plus you're not actually paying attention to how your target market is consuming content and doing their thing, then you've got this massive gap. And I think that's what's contributing to this terrible lead conversion, which is you've still got people operating like they did back when I was in university, which was a very long time ago. We won't talk about how long, but a very long time ago. And if you don't change, then that gap is going to get bigger and bigger because you're not actually addressing the root cause of the problem, which is you're operating the same as you did 30 years ago, and that's just not going to cut it anymore. Change is hard, right? It's hard for people to change, and it's certainly hard for organizations to change. And then if you've got sales methodologies that have been put into place, that have been used for years, decades, et cetera, it's really hard to change. So it's a good point that the funnel may have worked a few years ago, 10 years ago, even 3 years ago, but it's not necessarily, it's too rigid. I actually find the funnel really rigid because it assumes that everyone is the same and everyone, like you said, you put a bunch of things into the top and you've got a few things that come out of the bottom. Even if I'm showing intent, doesn't necessarily mean I actually want to ultimately buy. I may be assessing everybody just to determine, hey, what I'm doing now is perfectly fine. Companies, especially venture-backed companies, are given aggressive targets to hit. So they just go out there and try and hit everybody that looks like somebody who could potentially want to buy. And that sort of spray and pray approach just doesn't work anymore because the audience is getting fatigued. Like your audience is really getting fatigued with, do I have another vendor trying to reach out to me in some kitschy way, either by video or whatever, to try and get me to buy stuff when I'm not ready to buy, or I don't even know if I want to bother because I've got these other priorities that I have to deal with. It's tough to think differently about something that has been going on for a while. It's like, this is a tried and tested model, so I'm just going to implement the tried and tested model. Problem is, the model doesn't adjust to change.
So Melissa, how do we fix this? How do we fix this 5% problem?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ways we can fix it is marketing and sales need to be aligned. So whatever's happening with marketing, and I see this a lot with clients, marketing has certain messaging that they use, and it's not translated to what sales is using. So from a buyer's experience, from a consumer's experience, I see stuff happening, on their website or in their media, and then I hear a different thing coming out of a seller's mouth when I engage with them. And I think this is disjointed. Are these two even part of the same organization? And then if I do become a customer, I might hear an entirely different thing on the post-sales side. So just breaking these silos down in these organizations, and it still shocks me now in 2021 that we still have these siloed organizations that all serve the needs of the target customer, the target buyer, that don't actually talk to each other. or think about the thing in one sort of continuous customer life cycle. So even if just the organizations come together and talk about what is the customer experience, what's the customer life cycle we want to have in our organization, and how are each of the functions that are serving the customer at each of those stages of the life cycle, what are they saying, what are they doing, how do we empower them? I think that would have a big impact on these conversion rates. Because one of the things that I hear on the sales side when marketing complains about, well, they're not following up on all these great leads. On the sales side, I hear, well, these aren't great leads. these aren't leads that I want to pursue. And then when you further unpack that, they sort of fall into two camps. Either the rep didn't know what to do with the lead, so they weren't empowered. Either the process wasn't communicated clearly to them, or their steps, their order of operations wasn't clearly communicated, so they just didn't know what to do with those leads. Or what marketing thinks is a good lead isn't actually, sales just goes, well, those are not good leads. Like for these, 5 reasons, this isn't a good lead. And so that's what a good lead isn't communicated up to marketing. So again, you got to get the two groups in the same room to actually hash out, okay, what's marketing's definition of a lead, what's sales' definition of a lead, and let's actually come together and determine if these two definitions are aligned, and then what is the order of operations, what's the statement of work between these two organizations that says, okay, yeah, I'm going to pass this over to you, and here's what you have to do, sales, and if it works, then you convert that over to an opportunity, and if it doesn't work, you got to tell marketing why, so that adjustments can be made. And just like any process, it has to be a continuous cycle of review, improvement, adjustment, because things change over the course of time. So the two organizations have to work together and adjust accordingly.
What role is CRM playing there? Because CRM is supposed to solve a lot of these problems.
A CRM system or an SFA tool can assist with actually visibility across all of these different touch points of the organization, all these different touch points of the customer, when you do it right. So I hear from a lot of clients that their data isn't great, and either marketing isn't putting data into the CRM system effectively, whatever automation tools they're using, or sellers aren't actually putting data in a clean and clear way. And then and none of that is connected to the post-sales experience. So whatever services or customer success or whatever the post-sales experience looks like, that's not connected there. One of the things I've seen work well with organizations that still don't have this cross-pollination is have like a chief revenue officer that oversees all parts of the revenue generating business. So you have a chief revenue officer that has marketing report up into them, that has sales report up into them, and that has the customer success or the account management side report up into them. So that way, that one executive function actually oversees all of the customer life cycle. If organizations just took a look at all of these different siloed parts of the organization and actually created a common thread throughout, from what a buyer experiences from marketing through to sales, through to their post-sales experience, and just actually looked at things from the buyer's perspective, I think that would have a pretty sound improvement on the conversion rates all throughout those parts, particularly on the marketing and sales side. Because I think a lot of organizations take a very product-centric view. We've got this product out there, we're going to get it out there, and they don't think about what's the buyer actually experiencing across all of these different parts of the organization that's reaching out to them to try and sell them this product. So just by looking at things from the buyer's point of view, should have a pretty sound improvement. And then the other way is sort of internally focused, get everybody in the room that is involved in all these stages and start to whiteboard out, like, here's what happens when somebody engages with us or when we go out and engage with them. Here's all the things that happen. And that, if you whiteboard all of that out, you start to see pretty quickly where are there gaps, where are there things where you're touching the customer too many times, so that's creating like a negative impression on them, and that starts to really paint a good solid picture. It means talking to each other. There's no magic. It's just you got to get in a room and start talking to each other.
Fantastic. Melissa, I really appreciate your taking the time and humoring my questions, and I learned a lot, and I really hope that we will talk again sometime soon.
You bet. It was great to chat with you, and I had a lot of fun. So thanks for having me.
And finally, meet Tim Wackel, founder and president of the Wackel Group, a sales training and consulting firm. His list of clients includes organizations like Allstate, Cisco, Hewlett-Packard, Wells Fargo, Lexmark, Philips Medical Systems, Red Hat, as well as many professional and trade associations. His success as a sales consultant is built upon a lifetime of accomplishments and first-hand experiences that include directing a $50 million sales organization for a Fortune 500 company. Tim earned his electrical engineering degree from the University of Nebraska and currently lives in Dallas, where he tries to spend as much time as possible on the golf course. Say hello to Tim. Tim, welcome to Extraordinary Outcomes and this special segment where we are talking about fixing the 5% problem. Thank you very much for making time.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Coming to the what we believe is the elephant in the room, which we need to talk about, is this abysmal rate of conversion, which has been rated between Forrester, Gartner, and whoever else you want to look at, between 1.8% to less than 8%. So 7.8 is the max, depending on which vertical, which industry, which geography you're looking at. What brought us here, Tim?
You know, at the highest levels, there's just a couple of possibilities. One possibility is this thing we call a lead is not necessarily a lead, right? And everybody can define leads in their own way, shape, and form. But just because somebody agrees to a conversation or just because somebody expresses some interest in your product or service, in my world, that's not a lead. And so, you know, one possible thing you might want to explore, we could tease out is, are we really getting true leads? Okay, so that would be one of the variables. But then the second variable, which is where much nearer and dearer to my heart, is are our sales execs really knowing what to do with a lead once they get a lead? You know, over the years, I've seen sales execs that get a lead and they get lazy with leads. You know, they pick the best and they leave the rest. And, you know, just because it's a lead doesn't mean they're ready to buy. It means it has to be nurtured. It has to be cultured. There has to be continued warming. So, you know, I don't know where to point the finger, and maybe I'd point a finger at both. There's probably some work that needs to be done on, hey, we have to have more consistency and better quality in what we're calling a lead. But on the other hand, guys, once we give something to you that's called a lead, we need to understand very, very specifically what we need to do and how we need to do it to convert that to a sale. If the stick you're using is dollars sold, then I think reps are gonna take the least path of resistance. They're gonna take the juiciest leads, and they're gonna wait for the juiciest leads and leave, you know, the skinnier leads. They're gonna leave them for somebody else or just leave them to wither. I think it's a complicated problem, right? We talked about it could be the quality of the lead. It could be the mentality, the mindset, the skill set of the sales rep. And now we're starting to pull in the bigger systematic things like, you know, commission plans and incentives and awards. You know, it's a multi-headed monster. There's really no way to position this, a lack of selling skills. And I think there are buyers out there that raise their hand and say, yes, I am interested. And how much or how little we qualify them, let's just leave that for a different conversation.
Yes.
But once a salesperson gets it, what I continue to see today, and we've seen this for years, is I think very few salespeople really have that inherent curiosity. And I can't remember the last time I saw somebody that really understood how to plan a proper sales conversation and how to do a thorough job of discovery. Most reps will either, you know, show up and throw up, right? Hey, thank you. yeah, I can't tell you how many times, and it happens to you as well. I'm sure that you connect with somebody on LinkedIn, and the next thing they want to do is they want to screen share. They want to show you their stuff. I don't care about your stuff. So you have thank you so much for the introduction. Let me show you what we do. Don't care. Or they go through some sort of, so that might be sin number one. Sin number two is, hey, I'm not going to pitch prematurely, but I'm going to go through a discovery. But the discovery is, for lack of a better term, it's pathetic, because the discovery really focuses on need, budget, time frame, and fit. And when you ask those kinds of questions, that's not a discovery. It's almost a manipulation, right? If I ask you what your budget is, there's no value in you answering the question. The value of you answering that question is in my court. If I ask you who's involved in the decision-making process, there's no value. All the value comes back to me, the seller. So as sellers, we're asking what we think are discovery questions, and they're not. They're self-absorbed, manipulative questions versus really exploring, where are you guys at? Where are you trying to get to? What is that delta? What does it mean to you? What have you tried? Who else is impacted by that? We just got to get out of our own heads. And it's been hard in COVID because we're surrounded by our own heads.
Sure.
And we got to do a better job of getting into their heads and trying to really walk the proverbial mile in their shoes. I used to work for a sales leader years ago that said, do sales reps or do your customers consider you to be valuable? And I'd always say, sure they do. And then the follow-up question was, well, how much would they be willing to spend to have you make a sales call on them? It's like, oh, that's a really good question. So when I'm working with a sales leader, the sales leaders I work with typically have hired somebody like me before to help with their sales team. Here's the deal, though. I work with sales leaders each and every day that hire somebody like me to work with their sales team. So I'm working with a sales leader. It's like, hey, listen, I know it's probably been a year, maybe a couple years since you've hired somebody like me. Here's the value I can bring to the table. If you don't already have a process in place as to how you're going to interview and decide and implement this sales training program, let me share with you what others are doing. And whether you choose to do business with me or not, let me bring that to the table, because I am seeing people select, choose, and implement sales training programs every day, 5 days a week. And that's the value I want to bring to the table is, yeah, I'm a sales training expert, but on top of that, I'm a sales training buying expert, because I'm seeing how the guys and gals out there are buying it. And if you think that'd be valuable, then I'd like to be your Sherpa. I'd like to be your guide. I'd like to walk with you through this process. And again, if you do business with me, that's great. If you don't do business with me, I'm hoping you'll value that relationship enough that next year, next quarter, next millennium, you call me and I'll be one of the first people you talk to.
What is the right cadence of discovery, especially when you don't know this is your ideal persona, but he may not be out there to buy at all? Like you said, I mean, he may be either not looking at it at all, it's not his priority, or this may be something which will be of interest 9, 12, 18 months down the line.
I probably don't get hung up on process. I think there needs to be a process. Sometimes process handcuffs people and they feel they have to do 1 before they can go to 2. They got to do 2 before they go to 3. I'm a bigger believer in if we look at past opportunities that we were successful in, what information had we learned? Kind of doing a backwards engineering. So when I look at my business, it's like, okay, I really had a successful engagement. Why was it? What was the persona of the person I was dealing with? But more importantly, what did I learn about that person? What did I learn about that person's situation? What did I learn about the other stakeholders? What did I learn about the economic factors? What did I learn about the decision making? And once I know that, okay, these are the nuggets of information that I was able to reveal that I felt gave me a leg up, then I got to go backwards and I've got to engineer questions that will get me those answers, but I've got to engineer questions that again make me sound like everybody else, because I am different than everybody else. And then that goes back, and it's something we've been teaching for a long time, that when you're asking these kinds of questions, there's 3 criteria. Number 1, those questions you need to be asking more often than not need to be open and not closed. And I know everybody's rolling their eyes because they know that, but very, very few salespeople that I work with, and I've been doing this for 20 years now on my own, very, very few salespeople I know with can actually ask 4 open-ended questions back to back to back. That they can always lead with one and maybe get a second, but then they want to get to the facts. So these discovery questions need to be open, not closed. Number 2, these discovery questions need to be thought-provoking. And then the third and final criteria is you always want to ask questions with context in them, right? So I want it to be open. It's got to be unique and thought-provoking, and it has to have context. So context is me communicating to you, this is why I'm asking you this question. If I go to a sales executive and I go, what, if any, plans do you have to help your team improve their follow-up skills? Is that open? Yeah. Is it unique and thought-provoking? Probably. Absolutely no context. You have no idea where I'm coming from. But if I go to you and I say, hey, a recent article in the Harvard Business Review reveals that 80% of new opportunities today require at least 5 failed attempts to connect. Yet most sales professionals give up after just 3 failed tries. Help me understand, what are you doing to help your team capitalize on this opportunity? That's a completely different discovery question. Because now my prospect, now my lead is like, whoa, slow down, go back. What was this article about? So I'm not just asking about, hey, what are you guys doing about this? I'm bringing insights. I'm bringing information to the table saying, hey, I'm an expert in this space. This is what the paper says. This is what the experts say. And I'm curious to know from somebody like you who's a thought leader, what are you guys doing? Most of us, myself included, when we're in a sales conversation, we don't listen to understand. We listen for the opportunity to interrupt.
Yes.
Because you as my prospect will say something, and I'm like, oh, shut up, because I got something brilliant I got to say. Really good listeners will hear that. They're taking notes. And then this is something I teach and I don't do. So I'm just being transparent. You got to take those notes and you go, okay, hey, listen, let me pause right here. I want to play this back. I want to synthesize this, not parrot. I want to play this back because I find this to be really interesting what you're saying. And I want to make sure I'm synthesizing this correctly. You know, again, we just need budget, time frame, fit, decision-making process, and we think it's a good call versus really having this in-depth, meaningful conversation where you as the sales professional, you get off the call and you're enlightened and your prospect gets off the call and says, damn, I don't remember the last time I had that kind of an in-depth conversation with somebody. That was good and I want more of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we have to recognize that the days of Ida and Bant are over. I mean, no disrespect, of course. But they were great ideas when they came because they were really ahead of their times. But guys, they're 30 years old and it doesn't fit into this world. Anyway.
Well, it's very selfish. I mean, it's a selfish look at the world. You know, so if I go out on a date and I meet somebody for the first time and my questions are, I like to play golf. Do you like to play golf? I like to get up early in the morning. Do you like to get up early in the morning? I like my coffee with cream. Do you like your coffee and cream? I'm making it all about me. That's not a very good date. If you're going to go out on a date, it's like, hey, you know, tell me a little bit about what you like to do on the weekends. Hey, when you get out of bed first thing in the morning, you want a great big cup of what? I mean, again, and this is old school stuff, but you got to make it less about you and more about them, which again gets back to the discovery, being genuinely interested and asking the right kinds of questions.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Tim. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Tune in next week to meet Dave Calvert, founder of the Sales Experts channel and president of People First Productivity Solutions, Steve Hall, managing director of Executive Sales Coaching Australia, and John Moore, the vice president of Revenue Enablement and Value Creator at Big Tin Can, where he works to test and refine best practices and learn what they're thinking about this elephant in the sales room.
Right now, in the past year, we have all been experiencing more and more information overload, infobesity. It just is so much that we can't deal with it and it's no longer healthy. And yet, because we are in front of our computers, because we aren't traveling, because we aren't socializing, we put a a pressure even on ourselves to take in more and more information. The problem is nobody can really do that. Cognitive overload is real. Now, what does this have to do with selling? Well, your buyers are experiencing the very same thing. Too much information, too much conflicting information, and no one helping them make sense of all that information. So I'm very, very interested in the research being done by Gartner around sense making and selling.
And I'm particularly thinking of an instance where, supposing you're selling to something that is high value, let's say $500,000 upwards. And when you're selling that to an organization, the person that makes the ultimate decision as to whether to buy or not necessarily the people that do the day-to-day stuff, but the one that signs the checks and ticks it, is a senior executive. If you're trying to get the original meeting with them, to get in front of them, to talk to them about their issues and what they sell, and the person that's doing that is a 25-year-old trainee salesperson with no business expertise, it's very difficult for them to have an intelligent conversation at that person's level, particularly if that person is getting calls from 155 other 25-year-old SDRs who've got no expertise.
Do they really have the pain that we can help them solve? Do they really have an urgent need and a problem that they need to solve? And do they have budget? We all know these basic principles of, having success, selling, solving problems, however we want to phrase it. But we still go after the idea and the concept of, I need 10,000 MQLs this quarter. And sales basically gets this huge set of leads from marketing, and they don't know what to do with it, so they don't know who to call. So they either call everybody and fail miserably and get dejected and horrified, and they don't trust marketing, or they call no one, which too often I see happen too.
I am very excited to hear from you. What do you think about this elephant in the sales room? Please use the link below to record your views in video, and we will start incorporating them into the show in the upcoming episodes. Time to wrap up for today. Remember, you will soon have access to the full-length interviews and transcripts. Keep an eye out for the link in the EXO newsletter. And thank you for watching. Until next time, stay well and craft extraordinary outcomes.